We are going to be talking about sweet and sour pork today. Now, the sweet and sour pork you've been having is probably of one of two varieties. You've either been having the fruity Cantonese variety of sweet and sour pork, or you have been having the bastardized version of the Cantonese sweet and sour pork, which is excessively ketchup-y and plasticky tasting. Now, there are far more to the world of sweet and sour than just Cantonese alone. We're going to be showing you the Sichuanese sweet and sour pork today. If the Cantonese sweet and sour pork is fruity, then the Sichuanese sweet and sour pork is more of a nutty sweetness. And we're also going to share the secrets to making the perfectly textured batter for a sweet and sour stir fry. So let's take a look. Right, first order of business is of course preparing the pork. Now we chose a piece of pork loin. You can use tenderloin or you can use pork shoulder. Anything reasonably lean and has a good porky flavor will work. Now we are going to first trim off the silver skin on the pork loin, and then we are going to cut the pork loin up into thumb-sized pieces, so little batons. After cutting up the pork, we are going to marinate it quickly. We have here some yellow rice wine. You can of course use mirin, you can use rice cooking wine, you can use Shaoxing wine, anything really works, but we've soaked some star anise, some spring onions, and a little piece of ginger in there for about 30 minutes, which will add some interesting flavors to combat the gaminess of the pork. We are going to pour in the marinade and beat it into the pork. This is going to use the same sort of technique that you found on our Kung Pao chicken video, so if you're not sure how you can beat water and wine into a piece of meat well, you should watch that video as well. After you feel the pork has incorporated most of the wine, we're going to add just a little bit of white pepper. If you don't have white pepper, you can use some finely ground black pepper as well. After adding in the white pepper, we are going to follow with a little bit of salt to give it some savory flavors as a base. Just about a pinch of salt should be enough, but if you are really not sure, like I am here, you can actually smell the pork and see if it is salty enough. Salted pork has a distinct salty pork smell. I don't know how to describe it, but you can experiment and see for yourself. Just to round out the flavors at the end, we added a little bit of sugar. Just the tip of a teaspoon would work. Next up, we are going to be preparing the batter. The batter we are using is what is known as a partially cooked batter. This means we are going to add in some potato or cornstarch into a bowl, and then we're going to be par cooking about 30-50-ish grams of that batter. So to do that, we are going to pour boiling water into the batter and stir really quickly with chopsticks. You're going to notice that it's going to clump, and this is kind of what we want. The clumps of cooked batter is going to be crumbly and crispy even after being coated with a sweet and sour sauce. If you want more of these crumbly bits, you can make a lot more of the cooked batter. Now, keep in mind, the cooked batter will have a distinctly starchy taste, so don't go overboard. For the rest of the batter, you want to mix cold water with starch. The exact amount depends on how much meat you have, but the principle of it is to add a little bit of starch, then a little bit of water at a time. And you're going to tell whether or not the batter is the right texture by picking the batter up with chopsticks. The batter should not flow too quickly, and the thickness that your chopsticks are being coated is the thickness the batter will coat your meat. If you like a thicker, crunchier, and perhaps a little bit harder batter, you can use more, or if you're like us and you like a softer batter and a thinner batter that is lighter to eat, you can use less. I don't particularly enjoy really hard crusts on my sweet and sour pork, so I'm going to add a little bit of oil so it will be fluffier and more crumbly. If you want your batter to be really hard and to stay crunchy for longer once it is sauced, don't add oil here. The Sweet and sour pork is going to have the pork twice fried. The first time you put the pork in, the oil temperature should hover somewhere around 180 degrees Celsius. The second time you fry your pork, it should be more like 200 degrees Celsius. Before releasing the pork completely into the oil, you want to drag it across the surface of the oil so it part fries. This will make sure the pork will float up immediately after dropping it in, and this way you don't have the chance if it's sticking to the bottom. If it sticks to the bottom, it could burn. The starch that gets stuck to the bottom of the pan will sort of blacken and ruin your pot of oil, so just be aware of that. When the meat comes out, you should notice that there are bubbles on the outside and you can see some of the meat on the inside, which are a nice sort of reddish brown color. That's what you want. That's when you know your meat is ready to take out. Once the oil temperature rises to somewhere around 200 degrees Celsius, you can drop in your meat again. This should be right near the smoking point of most canola oils, and you're going to want to fry your meat twice. The second, much higher temperature fry will force out more moisture and more oil from your pork. A high temperature and long enough second fry is what keeps the meat crunchy. For the sweet and sour sauce, you're going to want to taste as you go. We started with about 50 grams of white sugar and then followed with some rice vinegar. How much vinegar you want to put in depends on how sour your vinegar is. So again, taste as you go. Next up, some soy sauce. This is responsible for the right color of your sauce, but also to add some nice savoriness so you don't go overboard with sweet and sour and feel sick after eating it. A pinch of salt and just a splash of cooking wine to finish. Taste as you go. Start with a bit of oil in a hot wok and then add your sweet and sour sauce. As you are reducing the sweet and sour sauce, you want to look for a nice shine and just enough viscosity. Once you feel the texture of the sauce is right, splash in some hot oil. What this will do is it will cause the sauce to split just enough so that when you add in your pork, the oil will protect the pork from going immediately soggy from all of the vinegar and oils in the sauce. Again, doing this will cause the sauce to split after it cools, which means you're going to have a layer of oil on the bottom of your plate once the sauce cools just a little bit. Whether or not this is a trade-off for crispier pork is entirely up to you. Aggressively add sesame seeds and you are ready to plate. Enjoyed hot, it is still nice and crunchy, but if you let this cool, it has a almost toffee-like nutty flavor and texture, which is also pleasant, especially during summer. So give it a try, I'm sure you'll enjoy it. Let us know what you want to see next and hit the subscribe button so you can see more amazing content like this. Also follow us on Instagram at Umami Complex.